We are talking today with 4 sisters, members of religious orders of women who work at Xavier as faculty members and administrators. Sister Roseanne Fleming founded the Athlete Academic Advising Program here and now serves as Special Assistant to the President. She has a law degree, a master's in English, a PhD in Educational Administration, and an MBA. She's been at Xavier since 1982 and is a member of the Sisters of Notre Dame de Namur. Sister Joanne Recker is a professor in the Department of Modern Languages. She's been teaching since she came to Xavier in 1987. She has master's and doctoral degrees in Romance languages and literature and has written several books, including 2 about the founders of her order, also the Sisters of Notre Dame de Namur. Sister Nancy Linnenkugel came to Xavier in 2011 as chair and director of the graduate program in Health Services Administration. She is also an alumna of the program, earning her degree in 1980. She holds a Doctor of Management and has been president and CEO of the Providence Hospital System in Sandusky, Ohio, and also Chatfield College. She is a member of the Sisters of St. Francis of Sylvania. And Sister Rosie Miller is a senior academic staff member in the Department of Theology and has been teaching theology at Xavier since 1989. She holds a master's in theology and is a certified spiritual director. She is a member of the Sisters of St. Francis of Oldenburg. Welcome, sisters. Thank you for joining us today. Let's start by looking at the role of women religious at Xavier. Women religious have been involved with Xavier from its earliest days, first as students earning their teaching degrees, and then later as members of the faculty or administration. So what do you think has been the importance of the role of women religious at a Jesuit campus like Xavier? What special gifts do you think you as sisters bring to the campus and its students? And I'd like to start with Roseanne Fleming.
Well, France, I think that one of the gifts that women bring to university campus or to life in general is the gift of love and the gift of sharing. And hopefully the students in our classes have been able to find that gift in reality with us and enjoy their time with us as Xavier students because of that gift.
It brings a balance because, as I read recently, Pope Paul VI said toward the end of the Second Vatican Council, where's the other half of humanity? And I think the other half of humanity deserves a presence. And where I see women have been helpful, especially to women students as well as other women faculty, is that sense of balance and advocacy for women's issues.
I think another unique gift would be as a women religious with students, with faculty, is bringing the feminine side of the church into the classroom. Another window of how to read the text as a woman, and particularly a woman who stands in the church, has been committed to church ministry.
I recall being a student here in 1971, shortly after women were allowed to take classes here. And I had a habit on at the time. A young sister, actually I was teaching at a school in Cincinnati, but needing classes in order to get a bachelor's degree. In those days, you got a 2-year degree and then you went out and taught and then kept working on everything else. So I came here, and there weren't a lot of me around here at that time. There were very few women, but hardly any other sisters. And I really didn't think too much about it because I had a job to do, get these classes and move on. But today, now that I am back here, I think there's a powerful presence that women religious provide to this campus. And in addition to what the sisters have just said, I would add that I think I stand for something of value that our students maybe don't think about all the time. I start every one of my classes with a prayer.
So considering the historic declines, unfortunately, in the numbers of women entering religious orders, let's look to the future. What do you see for the future of Catholic and or Jesuit education, and then Xavier in particular? Joanne? Do you have a thought on that?
Yes, I do. I think we have to look at this historically, and when congregations really flourished, it was in the 19th century. especially congregations that wanted to model themselves on the Jesuits. And Jesuits had been in existence for several hundred years. It took women 200 years to be legitimized as a congregation, meaning to go out beyond cloister walls and meet the needs of the people where they were. That's documented in a very interesting book that comes out of Canada called the Divet, The Struggle. So our foundresses, for example, knew that struggle. Now we see that congregations of women religious and men, even God's Army, the Jesuits, are declining. And people worry about the future of education. And as I think I mentioned recently, I was just at a 3-hour meeting yesterday here on campus on what it means that Xavier is a Catholic and Jesuit and a university, to really spell that out. And I think all of us are doing that in our ministries in some way, and I cite the example of a school here in Cincinnati. We are trying to form the laity and enable them to carry on the mission and the charism, and they're doing it quite well. The case in point being the summit. We don't even have sisters on the board anymore, but there is an ongoing two-way communication. They're very interested in carrying on the charism, as we are, and seeing that they do.
And you're referring to the Summit School?
Correct.
Okay.
And this, the committee that I referred to is for Xavier, to really delineate clearly what those terms mean, and to see, and we have started such programs like the FMIX, anything that comes out of our mission-oriented programs.
Yeah, I wanted just to add that I think the future is bright for Catholic education, for Xavier. I think there's a well-educated laity at this point to take over all the necessary teaching of the various disciplines. But in addition, I believe that they are very interested themselves in developing a spirituality, and I believe the Jesuits have done an exceptional job in providing that kind of access for the laity to learn about Spirit of Ignatius and to translate that into their everyday lives in the classroom.
Do you think the trend toward fewer women entering orders will be reversed, or will it reach a plateau at some point?
I think we're beyond reaching a plateau. We're on the other side of the decline, in the sense of our numbers. And one of the ways that I view that is that since Vatican II, we as religious women took very, very seriously reforming the church in Vatican II and moved into sort of that bridge. I always saw most of my ministry as sort of a bridge person between the laity, which I am a member of as a religious woman. I am part of the laity, and that of the clerical side of the church, and being that bridge. And in my early ministry, it was obvious to empower and train the laity. I moved into jobs where I was paid very, very little. And then eventually parishes or communities who hire people were able or saw the value of education to begin to pay appropriate salary for someone raising a family, et cetera. So I think we're also still those bridge makers in the sense, I think the role of the laity is the time now.
With the decline in religious members as we know it today, I think we're at a new frontier moment. So when you think about where things are today in this year, 2013, there are young women who say to me, well, I don't have to become a sister to do what you're doing. I can teach, I can be a nurse, I can be a manager, I can make money, I can go off and pray, I can live however I wish to live in a holy manner. I don't need to be a sister and give up everything, give up money, give up my car, and all these kinds of things. And so where I see the next frontier for religious life is that in about 25 years, so that would put it like 2040, I believe there will be one kind of religious life, and it will match the men's orders, such that women will have a choice of being ordained or being deacons or being like the brothers. Think of the, Jesuits. They have Brother Darrell is not ordained, but he is just as much of a Jesuit as Father Mike and anybody else. I believe that this will be the next wave. And this is just in my own head right now, and I'm not somebody that thinks I want to be ordained tomorrow. But what does the church have to offer the rest of half of society, women? And I think that we are not going to continue on with the type of religious life we have now. And it's been fine for me and fine for everybody here at this table. But I think there's the next step. And so by the time we get to 25 years or so, most of the people in my congregation will be in their very, very late years. And that will spring up a whole new world going forward with religious life.
And so how might that affect a campus like Xavier in the long run? And I'm going to sort of jump to one of my other questions here. Could that be the future of nuns at Xavier or sisters at Xavier, or are you the last? Are you the last of the nuns at Xavier?
We might be close to the last of the current kind of sisters that everybody knows in society, but I don't think we're the last. I think there's a bright future.
It just will be different.
Yeah, I agree. I think our job is really to help define what the future religious life is going to be. And I think a lot of that will come out of talking to women. I agree with Joanne. The women I have met on this campus, young women that have graduated in the last few years, are extremely dedicated to the needs of the poor. And I think as religious women, we have seen over time how our order has helped change cultures. The whole Catholic school system, for example, has changed cultures in this country.
Yeah.
And I think if we can look into the future and harness some of the vision that these young women are coming out with, we're going to be in very good shape as far as religious numbers are concerned.
That sounds good. And to capitalize on that, the next question talks about how you've all been at Xavier for more than 20 years, and you've seen a lot of changes, I'm sure. And so you were just talking about a student, a current female student. She's probably quite different than the ones you met back 20 or 30 years ago. So perhaps what are the most profound changes you've seen in the time that you've been here, both with the campus or the students or the education, and then maybe what hasn't changed? Would you like to tackle that one? Or
I think
Joanne?
pretty obviously you see many more women on campus, both women students, women faculty. There have always been a larger number of women staff. In terms of what hasn't changed, I think sometimes there's still a knee-jerk reaction on the part of some males to hearken to ways of being and dealing with people that are still from the past. So there's still more sensitizing to not just women, but to diversity issues. And I hear that from students too. We think we're accepting of diversity, and I'm surprised at some of the stories that they have to tell that shows we still have work to do.
Oh, that's interesting.
I come back and I see a fabulous campus with lots of physical changes and physical improvements. Perhaps one of the best changes is just the sense of Xavier and its reputation nationally, and it has really grown. But what has not changed, I think, is just that sense of the Jesuit values. There's more emphasis today on them and how we put them into practice, but Xavier just takes its place with other global institutions within the Xavier with the Jesuit family, as well as other schools, and I just think I'm really proud to be a part of it.
That's good, and it's as if back in the beginning, you were referring back to the 70s, the values were sort of taken for granted, and now you see a concerted effort to emphasize them and teach them.
That's because I would proffer that there were more Jesuits on campus, and so there wasn't the same sense of urgency about seeing that the Jesuit values were taught and were owned by other people on campus.
Right.
And I just want to add to that comment in the sense of what I think Xavier has done incredibly well is to focus on the Jesuit spirituality and tradition, in the sense of that preparing for fewer and fewer Jesuits, or the actual presence of Jesuits on campus. And they've done an incredible job of perhaps moving in the sense of what is the basis of Ignatian spirituality and the foundation of building up that spiritual wellspring that forms and shapes cultures and is counterculture in many ways. When I first came, we had a lot of students, say through the Dorothy Day House, et cetera, that were very prophetic and proactive, more in the coming out of the style of the civil rights movement, of being willing to protest, if you will. I think students today have a different style that perhaps is more informed, but also a networking style, where they really think through things in the sense of looking at the challenges of social change. I think it might be harder for them than it was 20 years ago, in the sense of so many stressors that I see my students under.
I'd like to turn now to the role of women religious overall, and particularly with the election of Francis as the new pope. Do you foresee any changes for the role of women in general in the Catholic Church? Joanne?
Well, when I was asked this question, everywhere I went, it seemed, right after the election, I was asked what I thought about it. And I said, well, I thought it was wonderful. It was someone from Latin America. I thought it was great. He was a Jesuit. But the thing that really impressed me, that he lived the social justice message of the church. On the other hand, I said, plus ça change, plus c'est la même chose. And I was very much interested in a recent article in the National Catholic Reporter that used those same words in English. For LCWR, the more the papacy changes, the more it stays the same. Because now, as I think we all know, Pope Francis has reaffirmed the called for reform of LCWR. And that is unfortunate from, I think, our perspective.
Let's explain what LCWR is.
The Leadership Congress of Women Religious, and it represents a good 80% of the religious communities in the United States.
Well, let's jump right into those investigations. I sort of open it up to you. What do you think of the fact that the Vatican has investigated the orders? There have been two, and that Francis affirmed the findings of those two investigations.
I think it's
Rosie?
too quick to really know what Pope Francis feels and thinks about this. He was the very first pope in a long time that just recently the international group of superiors from around the world gathered in the Vatican, and he personally addressed them, which has not been done. I don't know if it's ever been done.
But did you read some of the comments he made?
I read his whole speech, and I think he was very astute, using some traditional Vatican language, but he keeps using the term feel. He used the term that sisters should feel their way. I think as a new pope, you would not normally just go in and change things immediately. I'm still hopeful that he might review this.
The words that
that's
rang an alarm
really-
bell for me was when the Pope made the analogy that women religious are like mothers in the church who engender children for the church.
Oh, yes.
And to me, that's a mindset that's equivalent to a woman's place is in the home, making babies and tending to the
So
kitchen.
you see red flags. Some alarms have gone off for you.
Yeah.
What about Roseanne? What
Well-
was your reaction?
Well, it is early, I agree with Rosie, to make any judgments on Pope Francis. And the fact that he's reaffirmed the investigations doesn't really bother me. I was a volunteer when our order was picked as one of the orders in the United States that would be subject to the apostolic visitation. I volunteered to go out and see a person, whoever wanted to see me, and I enjoyed doing it.
So this would be as part of the investigation.
As part of the investigation, yes.
Involving your order.
That's right. They came in October, as I recall, and we had to sign up in previous June, which I did. And on the day that they came, or I was appointed to go out there to be interviewed, I arrived, and I had an hour's interview with one of the 5 sisters that were at Mount Notre Dame. And people always ask me, what did she say? What'd you talk about? And it startles people to find out that she asked me all about the Xavier basketball players and what I did in terms of academic advising.
Right.
So we talked about that for a while, and then the conversation turned towards to discuss vocations to our order.
I think it's
Nancy.
unfortunate that these two disparate investigations sanctioned by the church are out there. They're public. The apostolic visitation was levied against apostolic American congregations, not cloistered. And the LCWR doctrinal investigation was levied against the Leadership Conference of Women Religious, which is a body that was ordered to be set up by the Vatican in the 70s to help Mother Superiors and councils figure out what to do. Leadership Conference of Women Religious. It was not to be a doctrinal body that goes out and talks about different things. It was geared to help the sisters who are on leadership, and you only are a member when you are on your leadership team, even though the congregation belongs. I was just on my leadership team from 2008 to 2012. I was always going to LCWR things, getting their mailings, reading their things, but now that I'm off council, I don't hear a peep about it.
So why do you think the investigations were done?
Well, I think that bishops complained about various things going on in the United States, and these were levied. But when you think about how do these two studies help get vocations? As Roseanne was saying, how if a woman is sitting here at Xavier thinking, I might like to be a sister someday, but gee whiz, look at, they're under scrutiny for this and under scrutiny for that. Why would we do something like that? I mean, as a church, I scratch my head and say, why would we do something like that, whether it's needed or not? And when it came to the apostolic investigation, it was in 2009. I was on my orders leadership team. I took the lead on that, and I was bursting through the hoops saying, all right, well, we are going to show that we are an outstanding congregation. We did our own quality of life study. I was so hoping we would get a visit because we have all kinds of sisters that were ready to talk about what a great congregation we had, and we never had that chance.
We did the same thing of our own internal review, and we took it an opportunity to do that. I think our concern was it wasn't transparent. We have never received, any of
Nor
us.
have we.
We have never received a response. So no transparency, no indication of what's in those files sitting in the Vatican on any of our communities, which is most disturbing. I'd really love to follow up, Nancy, in your notion of like, say, our young women here at Xavier. The largest group of Catholic women leaving, or the largest group leaving the Catholic Church are young women between the ages of 20 and 30 because they do not see a place for women in the church at that age.
Okay.
Now that I find extremely disturbing. I look at the women in my classroom. I have a former student who came to me last week, and she graduated here probably maybe 10 years ago. And we met, and she said, I think I have a call to be a women priest. What do I do? Okay. And there is no place in the church for her officially.
And you refer to people leaving the church, and the statistics are that the second largest denomination, if it were a denomination, are Catholics who have left the Catholic Church. And you've just said the majority of them are women of that age bracket.
So that brings me back to
Exactly.
the first question. With Francis as the new pope, do you see any changes for the role of women in general? Not women religious, but women in general.
I'd like to return, if I could, to
Yes.
your question, why?
Yes.
Why these investigations?
Okay. we'll go
My
back to that.
response is a bit cynical, but it's shared by a number of clergy who have written in the same vein, that it was a diversionary tactic. If people are talking about these investigations of women religious, there's less focus then on the clergy abuse. There's less focus on the corruption in the Vatican. There's less focus on the large number of Catholics who are leaving because the media has been dealing with this.
But again, women in general in the church?
As long as we have, frankly, the people in power being primarily older males who see themselves as the guardians, the custodians of truth, I don't see a lot of hope. And, you know, even with the Pope, he comes from a male congregation that, and even the Jesuits admitted, I believe in was General Congregation 34, that they have problems with women in terms of their dealing with women, their sensitivity to women's issues, and they suggested some courses of action to change that, but that doesn't change overnight.
So there are a lot of issues the church has to deal with, but looking forward, what is the future for the Catholic Church? And what is your role in it?
I think if women, for the Catholic Church to be credible, they will have to deal with the priest shortage. They will have to deal with women. I think that's the issue of the day, is that they will have to deal with us. And in some ways, I think there is a crack in the window for women deacons. When you gave us your sort of image or sort of lens into, 20, 25, 30 years from now, I would certainly hope by then we have women deacons. I don't think that will come, though, until we have married priests.
I think that the church needs a great deal of patience on both sides, both the side of the women religious and the side of the clergy, to deal with one another. These issues are cultural as well as universal, and I think we need to be extraordinarily careful to maintain communications. We need to continue to spread the word, the goodness of God, the gospel message, and to continue the work of love for the poor. If anything would get to the heart of Pope Francis, I think it will be that work.
I just don't spend a lot of time every day thinking about what the church is doing to me or not doing or allowing me.
Too busy.
That's right. I have made my claim in the world. I mean, I have been a sister of St. Francis for over 40 years now, and this is where I intend to keep moving along. None of us think about retirement. My order has an assisted living facility, we've got a nursing home, we've got ministries all around the world, so to speak, where our sisters, as you get older and you maybe are doing less active duty, you might say, you are still doing these things. So we just keep going on, and one of the things we're doing is taking a hard look at our sponsored ministries and figuring out how to spin those into a perpetuation that might not involve ourselves. We're doing that with our health system, we're doing that with our university. We're not going to be around forever in this current form. So what do? And this is where the laity come in to help us out at this moment anyway, that it's really going to become a laity-run thing.
And it strikes me also that if you go back 100 years or more, women religious kind of toiled in obscurity. You taught in the elementary schools, and look at you today. You've got positions of great importance at a university. Your administrators, your faculty, your chairs of departments. I don't know. You do a lot more, very visible, and in some ways, more important or more powerful positions So the Catholic Church has allowed you, I guess, or you've done it in spite of them. I'm not quite sure how to put
What
that.
an interesting
was
point,
intentional.
France, because I graduated from high school in 1968. I went to a public high school. In 1993 was the 25th anniversary or reunion. So I went to that. Every other girl in that class who had gone to college was a teacher or a nurse. I was a hospital CEO. And it was the case of join the convent, see the world, become a professional, ranking up, reaching up to the heights of heights. And I think that is so true. Not that there was anything wrong with being a teacher or a nurse, but they were sort of limited, and I'd talk to them.
But by joining the convent, it opened the world
It
for you,
surely
didn't it?
did. For me.
And I think there was, I think that wasn't that Pius, before Vatican II, Pius XII encouraged, which actually came from the Vatican, encouraged religious women to get more educated. And we took that very seriously, where we really, our communities really educated us, trained us well, so that we could move into ministries and be sort of the forerunners of some of that, particularly for women.
Yes.
My anecdote along these lines is my experience at Ohio State, where I was for 11 years, and I was working with a department chair there who one day said to me, "Joanne, have you ever noticed you're different from the other women around here?" And at first I didn't know what he meant, and he was raised in the Baptist South, so he wasn't real sure what to do with me to begin with. And he said, "It must be that outfit you belong to." Because he said, "You're not hesitant to speak up as other women professors, women administrators." And I thought about it. It was the first time I really reflected on the fact that I had gone to small private Catholic schools, and I was in a community where all my role models were women, as they were in school, so I never thought of holding back.
Yes.
That when I first came here to Xavier, we started a group of women faculty and staff. And as I listened to their stories and I shared mine, and they said, "Wow, you stand on the shoulders and mentored by so many women, and we have not." That's why they wanted to start the group. We have not been mentored by other women and role models. I just take that for granted. I have so many wonderful women in my community whose shoulders I stand on and are mentors for me as a woman. And even as a leader, and a lot of my colleagues and faculty, female colleagues here, I just didn't realize that.
I think the university is fortunate to have you all here. Thank you for joining us.